A cozy but modest home where a chubby orange cat named Pudding is doing chores. Pudding looks sad and tired, wearing tattered clothes. A sleek gray cat named Whiskers is glaring at Pudding with a menacing expression. Pudding, the chubby orange cat, is tending to the garden with care, her eyes filled with a rare moment of peace and contentment. Whiskers, the sleek gray cat, trampling through the garden angrily, knocking over pots and flowers. Pudding stands nearby, looking heartbroken and on the verge of tears. Pudding, the chubby orange cat, standing at the edge of her home with a small bag on her back. She looks determined yet anxious as she takes her first steps away from the house. The road ahead stretches into the unknown. Pudding, sitting under a tree, looking weary. A friendly stray dog named Buddy approaches her with a kind smile. Pudding and Buddy, walking through a dense forest. They look determined and supportive of each other. Pudding carries a small bag, and Buddy is alert, leading the way. Pudding and Buddy arriving in a small, friendly village. The villagers, both humans and animals, look welcoming and kind. The village has cozy cottages, cobblestone paths, and blooming gardens. Inside a warm and inviting cottage, Mrs. Brown, an elderly woman, is welcoming Pudding and Buddy. Pudding and Buddy look grateful and happy. Pudding and Mrs. Brown working together in a beautiful, well-tended garden. Pudding is planting flowers, her eyes bright with happiness. Mrs. Brown watches her with a loving smile. Whiskers, the sleek gray cat, arriving in the village, looking haggard and desperate. The villagers, including Mrs. Brown and Buddy, stand protectively around Pudding. Mrs. Brown and Buddy confronting Whiskers, the sleek gray cat, in the village. Mrs. Brown speaks firmly, while Buddy stands protectively beside Pudding. The villagers watch with concern and support. Whiskers looks conflicted and defeated, understanding the depth of her mistakes. Whiskers, the sleek gray cat, leaving the village with a heavy heart. Pudding stands with Buddy and Mrs. Brown, watching her go. The village is peaceful. Pudding and Buddy playing in the garden. Pudding looks happy and carefree, her eyes shining with joy. Mrs. Brown watches them with a loving smile. A festive scene in the village as the community celebrates Pudding and Buddy's new life. The villagers, both humans and animals, are gathered around, sharing food and laughter. Pudding and Buddy are at the center. Pudding, the chubby orange cat, sitting contentedly in Mrs. Brown's cottage. Buddy lies next to her, and Mrs. Brown is reading a book nearby.